Welcome to Heartful Conversations podcast. We are here to inspire you, to sparkle some joy and hope, maybe bring some smiles as well. Now slow down and enjoy.
Welcome, friends, to a new episode of Heartful Conversations podcast. I am Lila Vasilescu, here today again with my friends and colleagues, Marius and Richard. And today we have thought of starting a subject that's really been inspiring lately for me personally. Maybe it's also because we've had a few days with more sunshine and the birds were chirping outside, and it felt somehow that spring is closer. And to me, spring is a symbol of aliveness and of simple and natural way of things moving in life, but also with deep joy in my heart. And so today our theme is called Engaging with Life. And before I go into a short story I want to share with you, I have a task for you guys, Richard and Marius, and I want you to think of those moments in your life where, let's say, maybe things were not going so great. Maybe something was not in the right place in your heart. Maybe things on the outside were not looking so well for whatever reasons. And I want you to think of what worked for you. What were the things that you could tap into, whether they were internal or external, things that would help you come back to feeling joyful and connecting with life and with the joy of life again. So that's something for you to ponder while I go a bit into my personal journey and my interest for this subject, engaging with life. So I wanted to tell a story about how a while ago, a friend of mine had some problems. Her dad had some health issues. And I know her since we were kids. And her dad used to be this, she used to say it also. It's not just me, but everybody kind of felt him like, this grumpy man who was always dissatisfied with life and with how things were going. He was very critical of himself, but of the world as well and of the others. Even with her, many times, she always had to be the first in class. She had to do things the way he thought they're supposed to be. And at one point, this was many years ago, he had these health issues. And one day, because his his blood tension went up a lot, he ended up in the hospital. And he was this guy who used to, kind of ponder on things of, what's the purpose of life? And, everything is kind of pointless as you all end up dying at once. And so he was in the hospital bed and he was connected to these machines, right? To check his pulse and his blood and his heart rate. And at one point, something happens, and you know how you have that line on the heart rate machine that goes up and down telling you you're alive and kicking and everything's right. Well, at one point that light started going flat and it made that terrible sound. And he was just in an instant terrified, and he thought he's dying, that maybe he's having a heart attack. So he starts hitting with his hand his chest and his heart and starts, screaming for help that something's wrong and that he's going to die. And so the nurses come and they realized it's nothing was really going on with his heart. It was just the machine, that something went wrong with the machine. And so the line was flat, but he was okay. And I remember my friend telling me how it was within days after this incident, after he came home, that slowly he started to have this kind of different approach to life. And he would notice these small things, like one morning that the taste of the pancakes at breakfast was just so delicious, or how they would take some walks in the park and he could feel the warmth of the sun rays on his face. So there was this shift in his perception. And we were joking and we were, laughing how that moment in his life, although it seemed kind of, dramatic then and there, practically changed his life. But what was that shift in his mind? Well, I guess we'll never know for sure. We never got to talk to him about it. And unfortunately, a few years after he died. So I wanted to have your opinion, guys, about how is it that we connect with those moments when we feel this limitless belonging only in certain times in our lives, and otherwise we have kind of like this planned days and months and weeks where sometimes we completely forget about those glimpses of aliveness. And are these moments planned? Are these moments something that we can be surprised of? Because maybe it happens when you take a full bite of a juicy, cool watermelon, right, on a hot summer day, or maybe when you're doing something completely mundane. But how is it for you guys? How does it feel for you? And related to the question earlier, how was this experience for you, if you can remember any such experience of having a hard time, and what could pull you back into a more joyful and grounding experience of life? Who wants to go first?
Well, hello, and hello to our listeners, a warm and sunny hello. It's good to be back with you guys. Thank you for the story. It reminded me of an episode recently. Just yesterday, I went to get my vaccine, the COVID vaccine shot. And while we were waiting after the vaccine, it was 5, 6, 7 of us in a room, just waiting to see if there's any after effects. And people were chatting. At one moment, an elderly person just shared the fact that his wife died of COVID. And this happened after 55 years of marriage. And the man didn't say it with sadness or with upset. He seemed quite flat, but on a closer look, one could see that he was deeply engulfed in that moment, maybe remembering his wife, remembering the time they had together. And he just allowed himself to share this with us, total strangers. And there was a woman in the room who kept asking, when did she die? What happened actually? And the man didn't say anything. He just wanted to share that event in his life, and I didn't feel like saying anything. I was immediately transported into myself. I could feel a lot of sadness and grief for this person. And on the other hand, I could feel a lot of, let's say, upliftedness. He took this as it is. He didn't feel like he deserved any compassion or commiseration. He just wanted to share with us his pain, his loss, but he didn't want our pity. He didn't want to share anything else besides that. He just threw this out there, and I could see someone in the room crying. I was kind of moved by the experience, and I lowered my gaze, because I remembered I also was recently sick with COVID, and it felt completely lifeless in a way. I didn't have any energy. I was feverish. I didn't have to go to the hospital, and I was in a way struggling for health again. I felt pity for myself for being in this situation, for allowing this to happen. But on the other hand, a voice in me kept saying, well, it happened. This is it. Just take it as it is. So regarding your question, I think although we don't need this to happen to us, we don't need illness, we don't need pain, we don't need loss and desperation, they still point to something. They point to something deeper in us. They point to something more meaningful in us, which we kind of forget. Why? Because there's another part of us that keeps moving forward, keeps planning, keeps a regular schedule, keeps looking to the future with hope, and not wanting to dwell too much on the present or the future or the past. So we all have this in us. We all have all these experiences. And I think what this gentleman reminded me yesterday was that there are moments when we just suffer, where we are ill, where we are grieving. And that is the moment that experience needs to be lived. Where let me put it in a different way, where that experience kind of wants to live us. Because going through the illness, what kept me going in a way was the fact that a voice of me kept saying and reassuring me, it's okay, this is what it is, take it as it is, allow it to move through you, allow it to move past you, and when you'll be back and healthy, and then you can enjoy that part of life, that part of being healthy, that part of being joyful and full of energy. Now, this is what it's present right in front of you. It's illness, is lack of energy, is maybe a feeling of being upset because I let this happen. So all those moments there, wanting to be lived or wanting to live me, and just not fighting, not putting up any resistance, not trying to embellish things. So my experience recently taught me that moments want to be lived just the way they are, without trying to be something else. And once this happens, and yesterday I felt a lot of sadness, and that was okay. I kind of let it happen, and I still sad for as long as he was there. But afterwards, when I got home and met my partner, I could feel joy, and I let that happen. And they all live in me, but they each take their moment to be lived or to live us. That's my recent experience.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, Marius and Lila. It seems that somehow tragedy or death or something of a contrast has to wake us up. It's almost like taking a cold shower. It's almost like walking barefooted in snow. It's almost like something has to shock us to wake us up from our dullness, from our mundaneness, from the lull of life, from the averageness of life, from just getting lost in our mind. And then we start missing all these graceful, beautiful gifts and bliss of life. And I don't know what that is. I mean, I guess in a way, our minds like contrast. And when we experience something like you said, Marius, in this story, there's, I guess, an enlivenedness of our senses and our here-ness in this world, and the preciousness of life. And I'll give you this like a simple example of the kind of like how our senses play around. My son broke my little son broke his arm recently, and he was in a cast for a few weeks. And 2 days ago, we went to get the cast off. And once the cast was off, after weeks of having it on him and, limiting his movements and having itchiness into his cast, and it was so cute because, he's 3-4 years old, and he took his one hand that was okay and his other hand that was broken. He says, hey, I missed you hand. And he takes his hands and he puts them together like he's holding it. And he started touching his hand and kissing his hand. And he was saying, like a little 3-4-year-old, I'm free, I'm free. And he started running around, moving his hand. It's almost like, we don't go around every day looking at our hand and saying, oh my God, I have hands, I mean, but here's this kid who for a few weeks had lost his hand, and he really appreciated his hand. He really was blessed by that, or I had somebody I knew who was doing kind of these like extreme things to get him into this state of appreciation. So it would be like, I hear him about jumping off airplanes or doing bungee jumping. He even one time, his name was Rodney, he blinded himself for a week. So he put a blindfold on his eyes and lived in his house for a week blinded. And he said, Richard, it was one of the most enriching times of my life because I didn't know this at the time, but I guess your senses get heightened. Your other senses get really heightened. So the sense of smell, the sense of touch, the sense of sound. And it's almost like maybe something has to be taken away from us, or we have to for us to see the gratefulness of it or to appreciate it. And it almost as if we notice it now that it's missing. And, he said it felt like he was making love with life again, like he was making love with his senses again, like the touch, the feel. And so we're all trying to search for that aliveness. What brings that aliveness in us? What makes us feel alive and connected and appreciative of life? And most of the time it is something earth-shaking that has to happen to get us to see those beautiful moments, to see the sacredness of life. I think if when things like that happen, Leela, you remember we used to go to the hospital to visit kids with cancer and take care of them and be with their parents and so forth. And people would say, oh my God, that must be so hard for you. And yes, it is. But I remember walking out with you, Leela, from that hospital, and the cold air would come into my face, and every day was like, oh my God, I'm so grateful. And you just go home and you hug your children a little bit tighter, and you don't take things for granted as we normally do. And that's not some self-judgment. It's just, we just go on with our lives and we forget, we get lazy, we just sort of get kind of, our ego goes up and we just, okay, doing and we forget that humbleness, that grace that enters our heart. And maybe we take life too seriously, and we're here to play. We're here to have fun. We're here to play in this wonderful playground called life. And that's why I think kids are such a wonderful vortex, gateway into that. And they're just experiencing everything for the first time, like all the little things that we discover or little kids discover, and you're there as a parent watching that, and it brings back that awe. So, yeah.
Yes, that's true. Thank you for sharing that, both of you. I connect a lot with the idea that, and I've been thinking in the last few days, that to me personally, it many times feels like this forgetfulness, like you also mentioned, Richard. And indeed, it's a pity that we have to get to these points, low points in a sense in our life, where we're in deep suffering, that we come back to this, because in a sense it's so simple. And it is in the simple things of every day, as long as you bring some awareness to it. That was my sense of how it felt whenever there's this connection, in a way, because this is how I felt the sense of suffering in whatever context in my life so far. It's this experience that you can't seem to connect, to reach out to anything or to anyone. And in the same way, it doesn't feel like anything can reach out to you and touch you like that. But then something happens at one point. There's some sort of shift in your experience. Like Marius also mentioned, you feel the sadness, you feel the suffering, the grief, and then you meet your partner, or you go for a walk, or you eat an ice cream, or you talk to your child, and there's this, playful, joyful aliveness in you again. It's so spontaneous. It's in a sense so subtle, but in the same time, it's taking you over completely. And as I try to notice this, and I kept a journal for some time now. It was a gratitude journal in the beginning, but then it was just trying to notice my own practice, and because we are going through our own courses and certifications with our social emotional learning programs, but also with mindfulness. And they were inviting us, to keep this journal. And what I noticed is that that shift comes when you make an effort at times to keep your heart open. And I use the term heart, but what I'm referring to is all the senses, like also you, Richard, mentioned, is this connection with your senses back again, sort of trying to truly and deeply listen to yourself. And then it feels like, oh, but this has been here all along. I just keep forgetting this when I wake up in the morning and I have to do this and that, and I have to answer that phone, and I have to maybe have a fight with someone, or this is not right, or this is wrong. And you get into those stories, which are real, and they do take your attention and your energy. But it is sort of like a veil, and it's this mind's narrative that's going on there. And when you can drop sort of in the body from this narrative in your mind, from this conceptual part of your head, where you at one point you start noticing. I mean, I'm sure everyone, if you take a moment anytime throughout the day and give yourselves a couple of minutes, you realize the chatter that's going on in your head. And then you have this body, which is like this sensory tool for you to experience life. And all these senses are just kind of like a way for you to deeply listen to yourself. So when I managed to do that, there's this beautiful shift where I pay attention to a different kind of noise, let's say, which is how it feels to be right here, right now. So I wanted us to actually offer in this podcast people these tools that we have used in our personal lives and journeys to get back to engaging with life. Because, the last year has been difficult, but we're always relating to last year. My husband used to say, but all of this suffering and everything was going on even before that. It was just that our attention wasn't there because maybe it wasn't close enough to us to make us pay attention to it. But the suffering and is going on always. And yet you wake up in the morning, like I woke up today too early, maybe because my son woke up at 5:00 and I couldn't go back to sleep. But then I had this amazing opportunity to see the sunrise, and see how the light is creeping in through a new day. And I had for a glimpse this idea, that the sun is there putting this light on us, and it doesn't really care what's going on with you, if you've done the right thing or not, if you're a good person or not, if you're in complete joy or suffering. It's always there. Like it's this constant, it's this grounding presence in a way. And for me, that's one thing I always come back to. This is my tool that I want to share, and then I'll invite you guys to share one that's the most powerful, because of course maybe there are many others, but I want you to deeply think of the one that always works for you, and it's always uplifting. So for me, it's kind of like this, it's a glimpse into this deeper trust into life itself, in a sense, like this idea that, you are here, and here is this earth, that's holding you, and it's allowing you to step on it and to live your life with your joys, but even with your sorrows. There's the sun that's there all the time. It doesn't care what you're doing. It doesn't care, that you haven't done the perfect report at work, or, you've lost it again and you've yelled at your kid, and, you have all these judgments on yourself, and you tell yourself these stories in your head. It's always there. It's a constant. And I just connect to that. And sometimes it only lasts for seconds, but it's good enough for me because I know it's there. It's kind of like a checking, like, okay, I forgot this, but whenever I needed to, and sometimes not planned, that's why I asked if it comes as a surprise, because for me, it many times comes as a surprise. I know I'm swept over by the simplest things just because I'm there with it in that second, and I made a choice to put my attention and my awareness on it. And it's just overwhelming to feel that, this universe is supporting me and it wants me to be here. Otherwise I wouldn't be here, so why not, take the full bite out of it and just enjoy it, even though, later on in the day, after I've had this beautiful morning and sipping my coffee, watching the sunrise, something might go wrong, but I come back again and again to this trust in existence itself in a way. So maybe it sounds a bit esoteric or abstract, but it is how it feels to me. And it is my most grounding tool that I've noticed helps me and keeps me connected to the joy of life. So what about you guys? What's that one thing that you can always come back to and it works for you?
Thank you, Lila. It's a very powerful question. And when you're talking about trust, what this evokes in me is a lot of things going on. So how can I trust, for example, something that is unfolding? How can I trust something that is always changing? Now, this is the big question for me, and for me, it's rather it's a question of how can I allow for everything that arises to be met with maybe kindness, maybe gratitude, maybe compassion, because not everything is the way it should be. And I would let Richard now because there's somebody here and it's a lot of background noise, and I will come back to this question as soon as I can.
Thanks, Mario. It's the unpredictability of life right there. It's there's not one strategy. I think I believe, well, for at least for me, when I found some technique or strategy that helped me get back into life, after a while, it almost seemed like it was an exercise that I kept doing over and over again, and then it doesn't work anymore. So the mind kind of holds on to strategies, and so you're constantly searching for ways to get connected with life. But of course, for me also, Lila, the biggest and most significant and most impactful thing in my life is again, the surrendering, the letting go also. And it's so hard because I think for all of us, there's so many things that unintentionally are taking ourselves out of this aliveness. And I found that in my life and in the people that I've spoken to and all the different trainings and retreats I've been to, it kind of falls down into like several main baskets. I think the first one is fear, that I think there's this feeling of survival, I think, in many people, like the fear of something or the anxiety of something or the stress of something, and it literally like a contraction in our body. And it can be something very overt and very strong and very dominating our life, or it could be something, a subtle uncomfortableness of fear, anxiety in the background, like sort of a background humming. And so I think that can drive us farther away from feeling alive, because instead of feeling enriched about life or smelling the roses, I mean, that's all beautiful. But for somebody who's full of fear in their body or anxiousness or stress, it feels like they can't escape out of that prison. So that's like one group of people. And I would say that definitely that would be the basket that I spent a lot of time trying to get out of in my early years. There's a whole other basket, I think, that has taken us away from this aliveness, which is the story that I'm not enough, that I'm not good enough, that I'm somehow incomplete, that's something I have to do to complete myself, whether it's please other people, whether it's attainment of fame or recognition or whatever it is, that somehow there's a deep down secret that if anyone were ever to find out that I'm unlovable, that I'm not good enough, that if, I have to hide hide this, and I have to do desperately whatever possible to fill in that incompleteness, and so we spend our lives driving forward somehow to complete that, and somehow externally we're going to find something that's going to fill that up in some way. So I think those are the two main, let's say, movements in human life. It's either, and it can be a combination of both, like the fear, the anxiety that's paralyzing, or the lack of, the not good enough. And those things can really keep us in a sort of a dream, or imprison us, or keep us in a matrix that doesn't allow us to smell the flowers, doesn't allow us to feel the wind blowing in our face. It doesn't allow us to feel the playfulness of life. And it's so funny because it's trying to protect us, and it's that survival instinct. So what are those stories we're losing ourselves to? What are those limiting beliefs? What are those narratives that limit us? And I think a part of the journey is to reveal that, and find our shadows, and look at them. Of course, the same applies that you can't spend your whole life searching your past and trying to fix and maneuver, because at the end of the day, that can be a journey that can last your whole lifetime. You never find freedom. So, and it's different for everyone. And it comes down to just, for me, every time I feel any kind of that extinctual survival fear that is kind of a theme in my life, and I've been able to work through it all these years. The first instinct I had when I was young is to contract, literally the metaphor of your body contracting. So you're literally, closing in, your shoulders are drooping down, you're sort of getting into a ball, and you're kind of taking a step back from life because it's scary, whatever it is that your mind is threatening you with. And whatever scary stories you're telling yourself, it's this contraction, and it's normal. Your body's trying to protect you. And so your body is sending out all these alarms out there, And so for me, what took me a long time to teach myself is that, okay, when you feel that, lean in. It's almost like counterintuitive. It's almost like a paradox. Like when you're scared and when you feel your body contracting, or your mind closing up, or your mind going in a million different directions, the last thing you try to do is to actually, like the metaphor again, instead of getting into a ball, literally like just opening your arms and opening your chest, and literally leaning in and saying, okay, yes. Oh man, this feels difficult. This feels contracted. My stomach is all tight like a rock, and my heart is beating. And yes, and opening up and leaning in. It's almost like you're saying, okay, whatever it is that you're going to bring to me, life, whether it's the COVID, or whether it's cancer, or whether it's, something happening to my children. Okay, I'm opening up. And, when I tell this to people, they feel like, what do you mean you're going to give up on life? This is crazy. I mean, this is like surrendering and giving up and turning around. And it's not. It's actually, we do this every night. We go to bed, we put on our music, we read a book, and we're tired at 11 o'clock at night, and we fall asleep. And then the next morning we feel refreshed, and we feel great. And that's a kind of surrendering. It's kind of letting go. And we're letting go into life. We're not kind of running away from life. We're not hiding from life, but we're opening up. And it's almost like a courageous act of bravery. It's not a running away. And, I have friends said to me, no, I can't do it. He's having some health issues now. And he's like, I can't do that. I can't open up. And I said, well, okay. In some way I feel like he's saying, no, I want to keep my illusion of control, and we don't really have that. And I think COVID has been a great revealer of that in some, global way, that, shit happens. And, COVID is a wonderful instrument to show us that we don't really have as much control as we think we do. And so it's this movement of, okay, I have to manifest my life. I have to do things. Yes, that's fine. But ultimately, when I feel that you're contracting, or when you feel that you're not good enough, or you're incomplete, it's that embrace, that opening up. And it can be actually physically, visualizing your body as opening up and spreading your arms out and saying yes, and whatever it is that the mind is threatening you with, yes. And it's like a mantra, like an affirmation, yes, 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 and so you can have this vivid imagination of fear and worry, what's going to happen, and oh my God, but this is going to happen, and oh my God, that's going to happen, and you say yes, okay, whatever's going to happen, even if in 3 years from now or 1 year from now or 6 months from now I'm going to die, well, I'm going to say yes to it. I don't want to be fearful, scared, terrified, contracted during the 6 months that I have left to live, whatever. I'm just giving you an extreme case here. I'm going to say yes and live it fully. I have no choice anyways, life is an act of faith, and life is unsafe and life is a gamble, but we have no choice. We have to embrace it. And that's the thing that liberates me more than anything. My mind starts trying to negotiate with me. I'm trying to compromise. I'm trying to find ways to wiggle out. And the moment comes where I just jump off the cliff and say, yes, let it go. And that, funny enough, gives me a lot of power, and my body just starts to feel relaxed, and that churning in my stomach starts to release itself. And then I start to feel, the endorphins and the, oxytocin flooding my system. And I start to feel this kind of release. And then I start to trust it more and more and more. And that intuition and that faith comes in, because the more you do this, the more you become sort of, it becomes sort of a skill. You can begin to, the grace skill, the surrender skill. And actually, after that experience of letting go, you get, jumping into the fire, there's something really liberating that happens, and you free yourself. And then there's this lightness, and then you wake up and say, okay, what do I got to do now? And when you're moving and acting from a place of openness and this yes to life, despite whatever, it actually is very empowering.
Yes, well, we've had our many talks on this subject, and I have to admit that, many times I was thinking that because in my experience, this letting go was going to a certain degree, to an extreme of, I'm not going, whatever hits me, whatever comes at me, I'm just going to let it be and not engage with it. And I was questioning this a lot, but I want to say this because I think it's relevant for anybody listening, that our topic, engaging with life, we're not only referring to this, majestical, beautiful, heartwarming experiences when, the sun is shining and you're on a beach and it's all beautiful and that. It's about those experiences when it's really, really tough. And I can think of some situations in my life or in my friends and family's lives where it has been like that. And I can honestly say now, after so many years, that the experience of surrendering was probably more engaging to life than anything else. Because if I think you were mentioning earlier about us going to the kids with cancer at Funden, and we had these kids who lost the battle, and we went to their funerals, and we were facing their parents. And to me, although I wasn't a mother back then, looking in the eyes of a mother who had lost their child was something unbearable in a sense. And I remember staying face to face to this woman. We were coming back from the funeral. It was this, gray winter day, and we were in the middle of this village nowhere, in the middle of the street, and she was just this, tiny person looking at me, and we just hugged each other. And in that hug, I felt her body surrendering to what was happening. And she had the courage to open her eyes and to look at me with tears in her eyes, and to tell me how grateful she was that we were part of her son's life for the last couple of months, because there was so much joy in his life whenever he remembered we were going and we were playing with him. And I felt that, of course, you're not at peace with that. Of course, you deeply suffer for what's going on. But there was this gentle presence in her eyes, sort of embracing what was happening, understanding that there was nothing she could have done more, and that at least she can bring some comfort knowing that the last few months and weeks of her son's life were filled with joy. But that's hard. And many times this experience of letting go was sort of saying that, okay, I don't have control. And if I don't have control over this, it means I don't have control over anything else. So what's going to happen with my life when there's so many things, coming at me, and I have to do this and that. But in the same time, I remember this with my mom when she was sick, and because in the beginning, when we found out about her sickness, there was this contraction and this fear, what's going to happen? She's going to die. There's nothing we can do. She needs to have surgery, all of that. And there was no clarity. There were all of these ideas popping and not really knowing what to do. And then one night I remember I was sitting with her, and she had fallen asleep in her bed, and I was sitting next to her, kind of watching her breath going up and down. And again, that same sense of sort of in my body, kind of, if you really pay attention, you do feel how your shoulders are tensed, how your stomach is contracted, and, and I was just so tired. There were weeks and weeks of trying to find the right way and doing the right thing for her. And I was just so tired and exhausted that I just leaned there next to her, and I could feel my body just completely, surrendering. And what happened then is that it's not something that means I'm not going to do anything about it. This was the distinction I wanted to make. That mother did everything she could for her son in the hospital and tried everything possible. The same thing, in the same way, when you have that clarity, it's so much easier. It felt in my experience to think of the right choices to make. It kind of, like you mentioned, Richard, it empowers you in a way. You come with this aliveness. There's more aliveness when you surrender than the other way around, when it exhausts you. The fear and everything exhausts you.
And I've seen people with great loss who just hold it in like a dam, like it poisons them, and it makes life bitter, and it just holds them together, and it actually stops them from feeling more. Like, in some way they feel that if they let go and they surrender, that somehow you're sort of not feeling, or you're not alive. And I actually feel that when you let go, I've seen tears streaming down people's faces, and they're more in touch with the loss. There's a deeper mourning and a deeper cleansing happen, and there is a time for mourning, and there is a time, and it is hard, and you can say it's fucking hard. It hurts. It damn hurts. But when you meet it with truth, when you meet it with that honesty, that raw honesty, when you're meeting your own experience, which actually is a letting go, because in so many ways, when we push away, when we resist, when we're in so much pain, it's really hard. It makes it worse. It makes it harder. It makes the bitterness there, and it's hard. And some people don't get there. They're just it's too contracting. And the breakthrough for me comes when there is that letting go, and then suddenly the tears just come falling. You've had that where you just start crying, and your tears come through, and then there's more deep feeling. There is, like, where finally the person's meeting that sorrow, and it's not running away from the sorrow, and it's not letting the sorrow dominate you or take over you, because that's another thing. You feel like you're going to be suffocated from that fear, or suffocated from that sorrow, and actually it ends up chasing you like a shadow if you don't meet it. And it's almost like your body or life saying, hey, you have to meet this. And the longer you hide it, and the longer you suppress it, and the longer way you run away from it, it's just going to haunt you. like a shadow that's never going to give you any peace. And then when you finally meet it, something magical can happen. And I've seen it time and time again. So yeah, that's a big one.
There's also this subtle expectation that we have to know how to handle events in our life. And given the fact that reality is so changing and it throws at us so many unexpected things, it's okay not to know whatever there is to do in any situation. And it's okay to fall back into togetherness, like Lila and you, Richard. You were there with these people trying to offer comfort, trying to offer support, trying to offer that space for them to actually do the grieving, accept the loss, and so on. So I would also point this fact that once in our culture we were held by rites and rituals to help us go through the important moments in life. But now we've lost many of these rites and rituals that meant that the community was there for us and that we had something to fall back onto. And it's indeed, as you said, it's scary to meet all these events, life and death, pain and grief, loss and suffering. It's really scary, and nobody is up to the task of meeting these this life event on their own, and it's not fair to have to meet these life events on our own. So this is why it's important to look around and to find or to keep close that person who allows you the space to be who you are and allows the space to feel whatever comes up, because feeling is a way of dealing with the situation. And embracing life for me is opening up to these experiences, because there's probably a subtle expectation also that we should feel good all the time, or we should aim for this, which is, I'm afraid it's not the case, because all these feelings are given to us with a purpose. They are given to us to shape us and to reach deeper into the human experience, because we have all these feelings for a reason. They are there to allow us to move through these events by fully living them, not escaping them. So I would also point this to as a reminder for us that we need to lean on into other people and to ask for help if it's the case. And hey, I just want you to be there for me while I scream, while I talk, while I grieve, or even when I'm silent. I just need for you to be there and allow me to go through this as it is. Okay, without changing it, without embellishing it, just as it is, with the rawness of it, and trusting our basic sanity and our ability to work with every situation that's going on. So trust, as Lila said, that we can go through this, especially when we are together.
Thank you, Marius. That's beautifully said. One thing that I also wanted to add to this was I remembered, as both of you were sharing, that at one point in my personal journey, something that brought a lot of optimism, let's say, was when I started learning about, how the brain works and about neuroplasticity, because this somehow went beyond, these sometimes abstract ideas and something that many times throughout our days, maybe it's hard to connect with everything that we've shared here. And to remind ourselves of these practices and to come back. But when I learned about, this is how we work, this is how the brain works, and we do have this possibility to change. It's not just that the past can fully control our future or our, present moment. We do have a choice. And that brought a lot of, freshness sort of to me, that, okay, so it's not just an uphill battle all the time and I'm never going to win. We can actually, create this new neural pathways in the brain, and we can break out of our old and stuck patterns of thinking and of doing and relating to others based on our previous experiences. And that felt really, like I said, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air that we can do this. And so what helped was to just stay with this curious mind of, how does this really work? How do I get there? And of course, it's a journey, and it takes all of this patience, and it takes all of this humbleness that, we're human beings, and it's hard to do this, especially when you're hit by life with this and that. And it took a lot of gentleness. This is what I wanted to say, that it takes this gentleness with yourself to know that, you're doing the best you can. And if that doesn't work, or the other, or you fail again and again miserably in your own stories and in your head, that's okay too, because it's hard. And as Marius said, you need to ask for help. But it is a way of looking, at life from this perspective of, there's nothing I can do, this is wrong, or like, people are mean, or the world is punishing you, this and that. Or looking at it as, here's another day, here's another opportunity. I'm going to do the best I can, and that's that.
I mean, you bring a great point up of self-judgment, that people just beat themselves up, And one of the great aha moments is saying, okay, and I'm not perfect, and I'm okay with that, and it's almost like accepting that too. I mean, surrender is kind of like acceptance, is a sort of a release, and saying, okay, I'm not gonna do this ongoing, journey of trying to fix myself and change myself. That, okay, I'm accepting the defaults in me. I'm accepting the parts of me, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to embrace that part of me too. Not that I'm going to use that as a way to hide away from my problems, but that's really important. So going back to your other question, is that what are the actual things that help us get out and feel more alive? And you bring up again, and I like to sort of marriage it with this thing about the brain and neuroplasticity. I'm going to kind of simplify it in a really simple way, but I'm sure neurologists will not like this when I simplify it. But basically, we have this left and right brain. We all know about this. And the left brain is this analytical, logical part of the brain and especially the left back part of the brain and the middle part of the brain is all about survival, and it's connected to the amygdala. It's part of the back part of the brain, which is related to the reptilian part of the brain. And it's all about survival and analyzing and verifying the landscape and looking out for danger. And then the front part of the left brain is, very logical and cognitive. And that's a beautiful tool to use. But in some ways that can bring a lot of obsessiveness, compulsiveness, and contraction. So whatever can activate the right part of the brain, which is especially the prefrontal cortex and the right side of the brain, where, we teach this in school about the green zone, where it makes things a little bit more lighter, and the right brain connects us more with our bodies and with the environment around us. And so it's kind of like we're walking around, first of all, like walking heads, where we have no connection with our bodies. That's the first thing. And then number two is we're walking heads on the left side of our brains, which is so cognitive and can be very obsessive. And so it's not going from one extreme to the other, but whatever can activate your right part of the brain, whatever can get you into your body, it will bring you release, will bring you, and that's what I love about science and data. And I'm really driven by data and driven by the science, and looking at the evidence and looking at meta studies and saying that, wow, yoga and stretching and getting into stretching positions actually activates the right part of the brain in the fMRI CAT scans. Wow, isn't that fascinating? And, if you do it over and over again, it's not just hippie, yogas that are just going out there and saying, hey, dude, let's do some yoga. But actually, wow, this is an inner technology, an inner science of when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling not enough. Hey, instead of staying in my mind and getting stuck and with this dead energy or feeling blocked and feeling like I have a heavy heart, well, there is something I can do to upregulate my energy and change my state of mind, because everything is about the energy. Everything is about that state of mind. And so there are techniques that you can do. And so it's whether it's yoga or meditation. Meditation's medicinal. It's giving your body deep rest. It is activating the prefrontal cortex of the right side of the brain, or doing gratefulness practices, or having a gratefulness journal, or if that doesn't work, a mantra. Okay, different than affirmation. Affirmation is like, I want to get rich, I want to be happy. Mantra is like something that really activates the right prefrontal cortex. And a repeated mantra or a repeated sound is a way. I mean, I thought it was very like voodoo kind of spiritual stuff, but no, the resonance of the vibration of a repeated sound actually, and not in any religious way, but actually activates that part of the brain. Or maybe exercise is what helps you. And so when you're really, really stressed, you go out for a jog, you go out for a run. Or I love playing guitar, and just playing music helps me kind of get into the right side of the brain. Or finding what you love, or finding hobbies that, changing that energy of that feeling of blockness, the heavy heartedness, or I'm not good enough, and a lot of it has to do with your body, really. And so that's really important, to create that kind of a routine or strategies or things that can help you tap into that. And, it took me years. I heard this so many times, but to get my butt out of the chair and actually try them, because there's always this kind of like second guessing and kind of being ironic and saying, yeah, this is never going to work. And you try it once and then you let it go. It's like, I'm going to give it a try so superficially, but, unless you reach a certain point of suffering where you're just like, I gotta do something about this. So,
Yeah.
Those are critically important. Lifestyle changes, even technology. I mean, the way that what do we do with first thing when we wake up in the morning? We're on our phones. We're getting, this digital dementia, which gets us disconnected. What are our kids doing? The same thing. They're on their laptops, they're on their iPads, they're in the house. We're not barefooted, walking in the grass, getting in touch with nature. We're not getting vitamin D with the sun, which helps with the brain to, there's so many things in modern technology, modern lifestyle, which is disconnecting us and physically getting us sick, that we need something to get us back out there and connected. And it's hard, because when you are sad, or when you are going through trauma, or when you are hurt, it's so hard. I mean, I used to honestly want to punch somebody in the face when they would tell me things like this. They'd be like literally, when you're in that state of mind where you feel blocked, the last thing you want to hear is some go-lucky, go-happy guy telling you these things. You just want to just strangle them. It feels so annoying. But somebody pats you on the back, gives you that compassionate hug, that kiss, that I see you, and something clicks, and then suddenly you're willing to try. You're willing to open your heart.
Yes, beautifully said. Thank you, Richard. I will want to end this with a short practice, but before that, I want to read this very short sort of a story from a really wonderful book that I keep reading over and over again, because talking about neuroplasticity, there's things that need more time for them to really feel like you've embodied them in a sense. And this is a wonderful book. It's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And quite towards the end of the book, there's this chapter which is called The Path of Unconditional Happiness. And it talks about, this choice that we have of being happy or being miserable. And it asks, it goes like this, it asks, do you think that God would like to be around people that are happy or people that are miserable? And it's kind of like an imagination exercise. And you think about it by imagining that you are God. And, you've just created the heavens and the earth, and it's also beautiful. And you can play with it and experience yourself through it. But now you're dropping down, one day to check on these humans and, to see if they're enjoying what you've created. And so God goes and asks the first human, he sees, how are you doing? And the human says, what do you mean, how am I doing? Well, how do you like it here? He says, no, I don't like it here. Why not? What's wrong? Well, look at that tree. It's bent in 5 places. And, I want it to be straight. This is how a tree should look like. And this other person, they went with somebody else instead of me. And that person ran up $100 phone bill, and this other person has a nicer car than mine, and that person dresses funny. It's just terrible. And plus look at my nose, it's too big, and my ears are too small, and my toes are weird. I'm not happy with it. I don't like any of it. So God says, well, how about the animals? The animals, the ants and mosquitoes bite you. It's a terrible thing. I can't go out at night because there are all these animals out there. They howl and poop all over the place, and I just don't like it. I hate everything about it. So what do you think? God likes listening to this. He says, what do you think? I'm a complaint department here. And then he goes and visits somebody else. And again, he asks the same question. How are you doing? And this person says, oh, I'm just ecstatic. And God says, whoa, well, how do you like things? They're beautiful. Everything I look at just creates waves of joys inside of me. I look at that bad tree, it just blows me away. And the ants come and bites me, but it's just so amazing that a tiny ant could be brave enough to bite a giant like me. Now, you guess who God wants to hang out with, right? So I really like this story because in a sense, it makes things seem easy. Like, it's just the way you look at things. And our mind has, this powerful way of doubting everything. Like, nah, it looks too simple. What? Just having a coffee in the morning, that's just good enough. Just feeling the taste of the coffee, or just taking a shower and feeling all refreshed. That's just too simple. It has to be something I have to work for. Happiness is something, and joy and engaging with life is not just something I get like that. It can't be that easy. And so I go over and over this story because it's both funny and true at the same time. And I'm hoping that the things we have shared here with everyone can at least, bring more curiosity and openness in our daily life. And I'm grateful for both of your sharings on this topic. And I think it's something that we can continue on another podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Lila. Thank you, Richard.
As always, guys, wonderful to be with you.